Hey, good afternoon. I'm meteorologist Michaela Smith. We are going to be talking about a lot of things happening in the weather today. Starting off with those headlines, you can see a major low pressure system is moving across the U.S. right now. That's bringing some strong winds to parts of the U.S., some rainy conditions for some. Some people are having a very wet Wednesday for today. And then eventually this is going to continue to move more off towards the east. We also have another update on Melissa. We'll take a look at where Melissa is currently. It's flooded Jamaica already and Cuba. And now Melissa is heading straight towards the Bahamas. So not completely done talking about Melissa just yet, but Melissa is no longer a major hurricane. Last check, Melissa was sitting right around a Category 2. So not a major hurricane anymore, but definitely still a hurricane. Finally, we'll have a look at that Halloween forecast. No major frights in sight. We have some pretty decent weather actually for a lot of us for Halloween. So that is definitely something to look forward to if you have any plans to be out on your Friday. Here's a look at your weekend. Storm reports are really just over the last few days. You can kind of see we jump in. This is more towards Monday. We can see areas that were in parts of Florida. That's where we had some wind reports on Monday afternoon along with some storms. And then those moved across Florida. So you can see again, a lot of wind reports closer to Tampa. Then we jump ahead towards tomorrow. Taylor talked about yesterday in the forecast how we were going to be watching an area closely in the Arklatex region and then down closer to the Gulf. And you can see this is right around 4 p.m. We had a tornado warning at this point in time, quite a few severe thunderstorm warnings. And this was our tornado watch that went until last night. But you can see we had some wind reports from yesterday. Still had a few severe thunderstorm warnings and a tornado warning off the coast of Houston. Overall, though, we really didn't have any confirmed tornadoes yesterday, just wind reports and then a hail report of some pretty, I forget what size the hail that was. I think it was closer to about ping pong size hail that we were talking about yesterday. Now we have this low pressure system that's spinning. So this is what was impacting us yesterday in parts of Oklahoma, caused the weather down to the south. And now it's just spinning here closer to St. Louis, bringing a lot of rainfall for parts of Tennessee, Kentucky as well. And that's an area that we'll have to continue to watch today, seeing that low pressure system. So it's pretty powerful. You look at these current conditions. There it is right there. That low is spinning. You can see that motion here too. But behind it, you see these lines here. That's going to be kind of that pressure. So as these are a little bit closer, that's what gives us really windy conditions. So if you're in the plains today, especially, you are feeling more of these breezy conditions. You're talking about areas you can see across Oklahoma, down to Dallas and parts of Kansas too. As this moves more off towards the east, that wind area is also going to start to shift. So it's more breezy in parts of, again, the plains today, but then eventually areas that are seeing all of that rainfall right now. You're going to be pretty windy tomorrow and then eventually closer to the East Coast by about Friday when we are talking about Halloween. May not be talking about maybe as much rain at that point, but windy conditions, that is definitely something that we will have to watch for pretty closely. Here's a look at some of these current conditions. You're taking a look closer towards the East Coast right now. New York, a few showers areas to the south of you. You can see again, just really that rain is spinning. Cincinnati, St. Louis, Memphis, Atlanta, you're all seeing some of that rainfall. We'll take a closer look down to Florida. You can see a few showers off the coast of Miami right now. You can see well off, maybe more towards the southeast. That's going to be the outer bands of Melissa right there. You're seeing some of that rainfall. And then we come back more towards the central portion of the U.S. Wichita, areas, Oklahoma City again. Few clouds still, far eastern Oklahoma this morning, but the rain has really started to shift more off towards the east. So you can see that spinning motion. Really cool to see, and that low pressure system is kind of right here over parts of Kentucky and Tennessee. So Memphis, you're probably also seeing some pretty breezy conditions. And then out on the west coast, Seattle, Portland, you're not really seeing too much rainfall. Really things are pretty dry right now. Maybe in parts of Montana, you're seeing some snowfall. But here's the temperatures behind this low pressure system. Things got pretty chilly. You're back to about 54 in Oklahoma City. Check out Denver, you're sitting at 47. Billings, Montana as well, 47. Boise, Idaho sitting at 42. So some pretty cold spots, especially areas earlier on this morning. Denver was sitting in the 20s to start the day. And again, you can see these lines. That's going to be that kind of area of pressure. As you get away from that low pressure system, things do get pretty windy. So something that we're watching today, keeping things on the more breezy side, I would say, for most. Significant hail I'm showing you today, tomorrow. There's a few areas, you can see this white just south of Washington, D.C., so in parts of Virginia tomorrow. And as you jump ahead towards Friday in parts of Mexico, again, you're seeing some of this white. really the reason I'm showing this to you is we're not talking about any significant hail over the next several days. Again, you can see even as you go towards Friday. So significant hail forecast for today, there is not any. We are not expecting any hail. If there are any storms that have some small hail on the eastern coast, we're talking about pocket change size hail. We're really not expecting anything too extreme from the risk area for today. So again, no significant hail will be expected. Hail size, if we were to see any, kind of got ahead of myself there, it would be about quarter size. Pocket change, most of it's going to be penny, nickel size hail. We're really not expecting any large hail across the area for today. However, I do want to show you the tornado forecast. There is a small area that the Storm Prediction Center has kind of highlighted in far eastern North Carolina. So this is even going to be to the east side of Greenville. You can see Elizabeth City as well. And then really a lot of the Outer Banks all going to be under this tornado forecast for today. It's very low, it's pretty limited, but with some of these storms as they come off the coast, especially for some of these areas that are more these island chain that's going to be off the coast of Carolina, again for the Outer Banks. Some of these storms could have more water spout type storms that if they were to get on land, that would then give you a tornado. Wind forecast going to be in the same area, extends slightly more into parts of Virginia, so you can see Norfolk as well. You're going to be having a chance to see some breezy conditions. This is mainly for later tonight, going into the overnight hours into your Thursday, and this is a pretty similar area tomorrow. We could also see some storms just because we're talking about the overnight hours for your Wednesday heading into your Thursday. So showing you these impacts, every single one of them are pretty low for those wind gusts. Again, not overly concerned with some of these storms that we're seeing for us today. Here's a look at this future radar. You can see this low pressure system again as it spins across the area and really just bringing a ton of rainfall through parts of really the middle of the U.S. right now. That's just continues to spin and slowly move more towards the east. By tomorrow, it's going to be impacting areas like Washington, D.C., New York, Toronto, Chicago. So if you're not seeing any of that rainfall today, it will definitely be moving your area. And this is, again, the area that we're watching for storms possibly this afternoon. So Norfolk, you can see River Road as well, Wilmington. It's just going to be some showers that we're talking about for today. You can kind of play this forward. This is around 6 p.m. Not really getting any indications here, too, that we're talking about large hail. We're watching for those signatures, you know, those yellows, those reds, those purples. Not seeing any of that. It's just kind of offshore rain for a lot of the day. Then you get to tonight, and we mentioned tonight into the overnight hours. That's where you start to see more of these little pockets of red. So that's where the storms may get slightly stronger this evening. And then going into your Thursday, this is Thursday morning, right around 3:30 in the morning, you can see areas in more parts of Virginia, really especially, going to be talking about the chance for some storms. Here's one more model I want to show you. That one I just showed you was what we call the NAM. So now we're going to actually look at the HER model just so you can kind of compare the two and get an idea of what we're looking at here. So still have that low pressure system, still just absolutely dumping rainfall. If you're anywhere in Tennessee today, hopefully you have a jacket. And that's a great point too. Remind us where you're watching from. If you're tuning in right now, let us know in the comments. Taylor's off here to the side. She's still here today, guys. She's just preparing me because next week she's going to be on a trip, so I'll be here all week long. But we want to know where you're watching from today, so let us know in the comments. And if you have any weather-specific questions too, also put those in the comments. Again, Taylor's watching to the side, so she'll pop those up for me if you guys want to let us know where you are. Back to the HER, you can see where we have all this rainfall. Again, the low pressure system goes up, and it starts to move up the East Coast, so Toronto, New York, Washington, D.C. Tomorrow's really going to be your stormy day, and that's going to start even in the morning. Overnight tonight to tomorrow morning, that low pressure system pushes off. But you can see even in the evening, that's where we're talking about some of those storms. So here's a look at today in that area we're watching. The HER has a few more showers a little bit earlier on today with some of these storms. We talked about offshore that could come up into parts of the Outer Banks. So that's what we'll watch for the better chance for maybe a low tornado risk for today and some of that pocket change, possible hail. Really, it's just a wind threat that we're watching for. And that will continue. This is 7 o'clock tomorrow morning for your Thursday. Still seeing some of those showers for areas off to the east. So breaking down your severe weather outlook, here is a look at Wednesday. There's that area that we've been talking about, Norfolk, parts into Virginia, down into the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Thursday, that risk really doesn't change. It just shifts slightly more to the north. So still impacting parts of the Outer Banks. Virginia, you can see Washington, D.C. Really almost all of Maryland is going to be included at this point too. And then you get a wide view by Friday. So if you have any plans on Friday for Halloween, so far things are looking good. And then even as you look ahead towards the rest of the weekend, Saturday and Sunday are also looking pretty good as well. Flood risk for today. Level 1 risk, you can see it's going to be parts of Tennessee, Kentucky, back into really the Appalachian Mountains too. It's kind of what they're highlighting right here is just all along the Appalachian Mountains. So that's why we watch these areas, because with some heavy rainfall higher up in elevations that could flow down. So still only level 1, but there could be some isolated flash flooding possibly for today. That risk area will shift more to the north tomorrow. Then we jump back to the west coast on Friday. You can see parts of Canada and parts of Washington seeing that. And then you get a wide view. Again, this is Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Not really too concerned for those flooding chances, because as this next storm system moves out, we get to go kind of back more to calm weather. I know I really don't like to say that, but that's what we are really looking at over the next several days once this low pressure system clears out across the area. 5-day rain chances, you can really see just the east side of the U.S. getting hammered by rain over the next few days. Today it's going to be more in the central portion, so St. Louis, Memphis, you're seeing some of that. Again, could lead to some isolated flash flooding in parts of the Appalachians. Then Thursday, seeing Cincinnati, parts of the Great Lakes. By Friday, areas more to the northeast, Boston, New York, even parts of Canada too, Ottawa and Quebec, seeing more of that rainfall. And then as you head more towards the weekend, a lot of that does kind of start to wrap up a little bit later on. Now, we just talked about a lot of rain, so it makes you maybe not think about fire weather, but I did want to highlight that there is an area today in South Texas that does have a critical fire risk. That's going to be just to the south of San Antonio, all the way almost basically down to Brownsville. Corpus Christi, you're just out of this, but we'll have to watch with some breezy conditions this afternoon. Things have not been super dry there. They did have some storms a little bit earlier on this past weekend that we watched and we talked about with you guys, but there is strong enough winds today and that vegetation is still pretty dry that they're highlighting that area for the risk area, at least for possible fires for today. Now I want to jump into the tropics, talk about Melissa really quick before we do that. Taylor, are there any comments, any questions from anybody? Yes, wind in Wichita is wild today. Christina Roberts said that, yes, so windy. I drove from Tulsa to Oklahoma City earlier on this morning, and it was one of those grip the steering wheels and hold on for dear life kind of day. So I definitely understand that. Anyone else watching and seeing some of those really breezy conditions, again, let us know in the comments. Taylor's watching closely over there because it has been one of those days already. And it's going to continue to be pretty breezy until about 4 or 5 o'clock. Once that low pressure system gets a little bit further from us here close to Oklahoma, Wichita, things will start to improve. Satellite view. Here is where Melissa is. So Melissa made landfall yesterday right around noon. During this time, Taylor gave you a full breakdown of Melissa, Category 5 hurricane that made landfall in Jamaica, moved across Jamaica yesterday, came back into part of the Caribbean Sea. Then it made landfall late last night in the overnight hours into Cuba as a Category 3 hurricane. So originally they were calling for it maybe to be Category 4. It was just below that when it made landfall. Went across Cuba, and now you can see it is moving into north parts of Turks and Caicos and really the southern side of the Bahamas. So this is where Melissa currently is wrecking havoc, if you will. I'll zoom out slightly so you can see again, we're on the southern parts of the Bahamas. And then eventually after today, she's going to clear out of the Bahamas and then make a track closer to Bermuda. So currently your winds are right at 100 miles per hour, still a Category 2 hurricane. That pressure sitting at 974. Yesterday when it made landfall, it was at 892. It was tied for the record strongest hurricane pressure-wise to ever make landfall. That was tied with a Labor Day hurricane of 1935. So very strong hurricane when it impacted Jamaica. But again, there's a lot of mountains down in Jamaica and Cuba. So really as it went across the land, even though the islands aren't huge compared to, if it were to impact parts of the U.S. and then it's completely landlocked at that point, with a lot of that higher terrain and those elevations, it really just tore the storm up, which is good news because now we're talking about, again, a Category 2 hurricane. So wind still right around 100 miles per hour. You can see as it goes across the Bahamas. By tomorrow morning, right around 8 a.m., you're still sitting at about 105, so maybe even some kind of re-strengthening expected once it gets back more to open waters, then closer to Bermuda by about Friday, and then it's still tracking more towards the north. Eventually it becomes a low pressure system and falls off, and we don't have to talk about Melissa anymore, although I'm still sure that we'll be talking about Melissa for years to come just because it was such an impactful hurricane. Speaking of hurricanes, I want to show you where we are. We've completely gone through the first list of names. We had Lorenzo, Melissa. If we were to have any kind of storm form, Nestor would be up next in our list. And for named storms for us here at HailTrace, on average in a typical hurricane season, Usually get about 14 named storms. 7 of those are hurricanes and then 3 are major. Last year we had 18 named storms, 11 hurricanes, and then 5 of those were major. Our forecast that we were saying was going to be about 12 to 17 storms. We're sitting at, what is this, 13 or 14 now, I believe, Taylor?
Yeah, I think it's 14.
14 now, so we have officially gotten to that range that we said. Hurricanes, I believe this is 6 or 7, and then this was the 4th major hurricane. We had 3 Category 5 hurricanes this year, Melissa being the most recent, but then we also had a Category 4 hurricane. So we actually had 4 major hurricanes this year, so not quite to 2024 status, again, with that 5, but on that note, at least, it was a pretty active season for major hurricanes. Tropical climatology, you're getting closer to the end. We're almost to November right here, so that's where you can see if my little graphic pops up. Maybe there it goes. This is where we almost are into November 1st. That's going to happen on Saturday. That'll be the first day of November. And there's still a little bit of activity at the beginning of November. Now, really, once we get past November to December, we officially kind of stop talking about hurricane season. But we even had some tropical storms and hurricanes that formed last year in 2024 into November. 2020 is another year that really comes to mind that we kept having hurricanes. We got past the alphabet and started getting into the Greek alphabet in 2020. And that was, again, happening partially into November too. So just because we're getting towards the tail end of hurricane season doesn't mean we completely can kind of take a break yet from talking about these storms. We could potentially have a few more develop within the next week, week and a half. Brief cool down for a lot of us across the U.S. now that we're back on land. You can really see where that low pressure system is that I showed you a little bit early on, because check out these temperatures. Partial from normal, you can see up here, some of us are between 10 to 20 degrees cooler than normal right now. I know when I drove up again, woke up this morning, we were sitting in the 40s in Oklahoma, and I was like, wow, it's a little cold outside. I had to grab my jacket. I know a lot of people probably felt that way today, especially if you're dealing with that cold rain. That is definitely something that makes you feel more like fall, which is good because things have been pretty warm here recently. Here's a look at tomorrow, so you can still see quite a bit of us across the U.S. are going to have these below average conditions. Then we get to Friday, that low pressure system starts to move out to the northeast. Warmer weather will start to move in. Another high pressure system is going to take place. That's what usually gives us that calmer weather that we talked about. So at that point, you can see Billings, San Francisco, Las Vegas, Denver, things are starting to warm up by Friday. You head into Saturday and that warmth is starting to spread back this direction. And then really by Sunday, Monday, that's when we're talking about a lot of us across the U.S. at that point are starting to deal with more seasonal, if not slightly above average temperatures. So walking you through these future temperatures, this is 6 p.m. today. You can still see here in Oklahoma, we're only getting into the 50s this afternoon, staying in the 40s in Denver for today. A little bit warmer areas like El Paso and far southern parts of California, Los Angeles at 85. But really a lot of us today are going to be cooler for your Wednesday. Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. in the 30s in Oklahoma, Kansas City, Denver, 35 in Billings. So a pretty chilly start to your Thursday. That's why you'll also want to have a jacket as you step out the door tomorrow. And then as you head towards Thursday afternoon, there's still going to be some places, especially where you see this lower pressure system will be closer to about Detroit tomorrow. So that's where temperatures will continue to be a little bit cooler. Once we get to Friday morning, still chilly in the 40s and 20s and 30s. Check out Denver, 29 Friday morning. But then Friday afternoon, that's where that low pressure system is really out of the U.S. now. It's back into parts of Canada. So at that point in time, you can still see some cooler spots, areas, especially in the mountains and the Rockies. But we start to introduce more of those warmer temperatures after we get towards the weekend. Here's Saturday, another cool start for places, but then you're back into the 50s, 60s, even southern Texas, you're in the 70s in the afternoon. Sunday, it's a little bit of a cooler start in the morning, but you're really seeing that warm up as we go throughout the day. By Monday, you may still be thinking about a jacket, but things are warming up at that point in time. Looking at this extended temperature outlook, this is the first week of November, so the 3rd through the 7th, and a lot of us across the lower 48 are going to be dealing with these warmer than average conditions, especially out towards the west. Now, I don't want you to look at this and think, oh my gosh, we're talking about 100s in November. And that's not what we're talking about. But with this, we're still talking about the chance for warmer than average temperatures, and that's putting you maybe 5 to 10 degrees above what you usually would be, areas that the color is not maybe as dark. Once you go a little bit further off towards the west, that means you're talking about maybe 10 to 15 degrees warmer. But if you're usually sitting in those 60s this time of year or 70s, then you're talking about maybe mid 70s or 80s. So it's not going to be unbearable. But again, if it's fall, you don't really want to talk about 80s in November. And on that same note, a lot of the areas that you're seeing those warmer than average conditions, temperatures as we kind of see another high pressure system set up means we take away the rain chances, things get more calm, but that means we're also going to have a chance to dry out a little bit more, except for areas up towards the northwest. You're talking about maybe Vancouver, Portland, that area, maybe seeing a little bit more rainfall. We'll have to watch and see. This is that time of year we start to see more of those atmospheric rivers, more rainfall moving in. So that definitely could be a possibility over the next several days. Hey, if you watch with us today and you aren't following us, make sure that you are able to do that. We do these live forecasts every single day at noon, but we're also posting updates with things just happening in the weather. So if you want to know more about Melissa or just other things that are going on across the U.S., follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and on TikTok. We're still on TikTok right now, so I'll jump to you guys in just a minute and answer any of those questions. And if you want a wind, hail, or a tornado map, you can give us a call at 855-334-4245, or you can email us at info@hailtrace.com, or you can go to our website, www.hailtrace.com. Thank you so much for everyone joining us today. Taylor, do we have any questions before we wrap up?
We're all good.
All good on questions. Perfect. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for today. Hopefully you enjoyed that forecast with things being a little bit cooler. We'll be back here tomorrow at the same time and same place.